Daddy, Grandma, help me.
Mom! Mom, are you all right? Mom!
Worldwide, over 2 million patients will be diagnosed with acute respiratory distress syndrome this year. In the United States alone, about 200,000 patients will be diagnosed with ARDS. About half of those patients will die.
ARDS affects men.
ARDS affects women.
ARDS affects children.
ARDS affects families.
ARDS affects everyone.
It does not discriminate.
ARDS is a syndrome that occurs after one of 60 known precipitation causes. It attacks the lungs and renders them to breathe ineffectively. After admission to the hospital, ARDS strikes within 24 to 48 hours. Within 2 days, the patient's lungs will show a whiteout on chest X-ray. This means that they are in complete distress and not functioning properly. ARDS is always a critical medical condition that requires a team of health professionals. Patients always require mechanical ventilation, which leaves the body vulnerable. Complications are quite common and often deadly with ARDS patients. These complications can include sepsis, hospital-acquired infections, and multi-organ failure. Patients can be hospitalized for weeks, often months. ARDS not only affects the patient, ARDS affects everyone they love and everyone who loves them. The toll of watching a loved one with ARDS is traumatic. Families are devastated and lost. Caregivers often suffer from depression or post-traumatic stress disorder after what they've seen. Survivors of ARDS also suffer from depression or post-traumatic stress disorder after what they have endured. Most people have never heard of acute respiratory distress syndrome until they or a loved one is diagnosed. It's overwhelming not knowing what's happening to your loved one. That's why the ARDS Foundation was created. At ARDSUSA.org, you can find a wealth of knowledge from medical professionals and stories about this awful syndrome. In December 2000, Eileen Zaharias, an ARDS survivor, and Paula Blonsky, who lost her sister to ARDS, created the ARDS Foundation. The ARDS Foundation offers informative literature, support to families, support to patient survivors, and helps to fund medical research. The ARDS Foundation lets everyone in the ARDS community know that they are not alone.
It's a reaction of the lung to a variety of different insults, either after a trauma like a car accident or a severe bloodstream infection or pneumonia. And in many ways, the lung goes into shock, and then people require life support, mechanical ventilators, and generally end up in an ICU for a long period of time.
When I was 33 years old, I was struck down with lower back pain, and literally 2 days later, I was in the hospital fighting for my life. I ended up in the hospital for 9 weeks. I was on a vent for 8 weeks. I was in a drug-induced coma for 4 weeks.
Eileen was a young woman who had a community-acquired pneumonia that was probably misdiagnosed early on, came in and developed ARDS.
Back in 1998, my sister had some minor surgery. Approximately 2 or 3 weeks later, her wound wasn't healing, it was just minor surgery, and she developed a high fever. So we took her to the ER within 2 days. She told us she couldn't breathe. During the lung biopsy, her lung collapsed, and that's when they put her on a respirator. And she never came off the respirator. She was in the hospital for 8 weeks, during which time they were doing various tests, and we also found out she had leukemia. The doctors were confident they could cure the leukemia if they could just get her through the ARDS, but we never had that chance.
My chances of survival were predicted as slim. My family was told that there was no hope.
But ultimately, she did recover, and she had her tracheostomy taken out, and she rehabilitated, and she has survived to create the ARDS Foundation.
The foundation was created initially for one purpose, and that purpose was to create one informative brochure that we could get out to families, loved ones, patients, explaining in plain English what ARDS was. There was nothing else out there at the time that I was sick or our co-founder's sister had been diagnosed with ARDS.
When my family and I were going through the crisis with my sister, we searched for information and there just was no answers out there. We asked the doctors, we asked the nurses, and we didn't want anyone else to have to go through that lack of information, not knowing what their loved one is going through. So Eileen and I started the foundation to get that information into the hands of the family that need it so much.
The best place for family members to gather information about ARDS is the ARDS Foundation website, which is ardsusa.org. That's a good place to start because there are links to other websites that are very useful, including the National Institutes of Health's ARDS Clinical Trials Network site and other websites.
For more information or support, contact the ARDS Foundation at ardsusa.org or 312-749-7047.
And together we can breathe easy again.